Adab, I am Faisal Husain. On behalf of Lucknow Bioscope, we bring you another episode of नायाब नगीने. और इस बार हम आप सबके लिए लाए हैं एक ट्रूली नायाब नगीना लखनऊ का, कार्लाइल मैकफार्लैंड. जो कार्लाइल मैकफार्लैंड ने बहुत सारे इश्यूज पे आज तक की बात की है, बहुत सारी बातें की हैं, लेकिन आज हम कार्लाइल मैकफार्लैंड की जाती जिंदगी के बारे में बात करेंगे, अबाउट हिज पर्सनल लाइफ. हाय कार्लाइल.
Hello, Faisal, and hello to all our viewers.
एंड बिफोर वी स्टार्ट, आप सबसे माफी चाहते हैं. कुछ टेक्निकल ग्लिच हो गया था जो मैं नहीं समझता हूं क्या है, बिकॉज आई एम नॉट अ टेक पर्सन. लेकिन कुछ टेक्निकल ग्लिच था जिसकी वजह से हम लोग का ये प्रोग्राम थोड़ा लेट शुरू हो रहा है. प्लीज बेयर विद अस. आई एम श्योर यू विल अंडरस्टैंड. Khalil. Khalil, Carlyle Andre McFarland is your full name. You, McFarland, what is McFarland?
Well, the prefix Mac or Muck or just M means son of.
Okay.
And Farland is a Scottish word that comes from the Gaelic translation of Bartholomew, who was one of the apostles of Jesus, who in Gaelic is called Pálainn. So,
Okay.
son of Pálainn, son of Farlane,
Farlane.
son of Farland, McFarland. Okay, so that's quite a mouthful for a name, but it's always interesting to know what one's ancestry is and
Yeah.
what one's pedigree is, as it were.
So, Khalil, your family, no, this is a family descended from Scotland, right?
Right.
So, do you know when they came into India?
The records that I have, actual documents, marriage certificates, birth certificates, which date back to 1790. Now, I say 1790 because that was when McFarland was married in Uttakaman. And we have the marriage certificate of that particular ancestor. And so we trace ancestry back to that particular date. The person in question came out to India as an apothecary. An apothecary is, I think, a fancy name for a compounder. So he was a part of the medical services for the company and was in Uttakaman. And the family, through the generations, gradually moved up north. And I was born in Lucknow. I've lived all my life in Lucknow. And I consider Lucknow to be home, the only home I know.
Yes, of course. And you know, you've lived all your life. I know that right in the heart of Lucknow. You've lived in Hazratganj. You were, I think, were you born in that house? Well, whatever.
I was born while my parents lived in that house.
Yeah. That's what I meant. So now, Hazratganj, living there, and then La Martiniere, it's been in you throughout. I mean, you studied in La Martiniere. What year did you start La Martiniere?
Well, actually, my brothers and I had the unique privilege of beginning our education in La Martiniere Girls' School, as it was at that time, not Girls' College, because it was the practice that boys would study in the girls' school till class 5, and then in class 6, they would come to this all-boys school where there were very few day scholars, and it was largely a boarding establishment, and we came there. But I suppose because of costs of maintenance and so on, because so many years later, I faced the same problems, it was necessary to open up the school to day scholars as well. And so the classes were begun in the boys' college one at a time. So therefore, class 5, class 4, class 3, class 2, class 1. Okay, yeah, and that's the way in which we went. My brothers joined school in class 5. I joined school at Martiniere College in class 3. The reason being, as I said, because the opportunities were there and we were gently edged out of the girls' school, which still keeps me a little salty, but I regard myself as an alumnus of both La Martiniere Girls' School as well as La Martiniere College.
What year would that be?
Um, it would be 68, 1968. And how I remember that is because I do remember getting a centenary badge when Mahatma Gandhi's centenary was celebrated in 1969. And I've still got that badge somewhere. And I know that that badge came to me in the boys' college. So it would have been that year.
Okay. Now, 68 to 2024. That's a lot of years. Let me do a quick maths. 24 and 32 is 56 years.
Yeah.
So you spent 56 years associated with the school. बीच में नहीं भी थे,
No,
बाहर थे, लेकिन
68 is La Martiniere College, but 65 would have been La Martiniere Girls College. Okay, so
Oh,
it's from
boy.
65 till now, which is almost 60 years. All right.
Oh, boy.
So
kind of a Martinian who's as salty as you.
no, you can have somebody. There are people who are much older than I, who I am in touch with, and they have the happiest memories of their school. And I'm so proud to know them and to know that we share a similar tradition.
Oh, lovely. I'll just refer to my phone. I just put some notes here. You don't mind, please. So, the Anglo-Indian community, I wanted to ask you. Now, you're part of the Anglo-Indian community. You are one of the leading lights of the Anglo-Indian community in Lucknow. है आप नायाब नगीना है. So, when I was growing up in Lucknow, especially in the Lal Bagh area and Hazratganj, we used to have a lot of Anglo-Indians, and they were an inherent part of the Lucknow culture. We see very few of them now. Have they left town? Why do you think they left? क्या हुआ? क्या नहीं हुआ? People would like to know about that for sure.
You refer to the time when you were very young, which is
So
not
70s,
so much.
which is 70s.
All right, the 70s. By then, the Anglo-Indian diaspora was actually coming to an end. In 1947 and the years immediately following, there were swathes of people who moved to different parts of the world in order to find different opportunity, perhaps because they felt that they would not be very comfortable or very accepted within independent India. I'm happy to say that they were wrong. Many went back to, in inverted commas, back home to the UK, where I think they must have been miserable because even the jobs that they got would have been jobs of absolute servitude. Many went to Canada, many went to the new world of Australia, some went to the United States. So we find that by the time the 70s came, you had just those who had either A, chosen not to go, or B, had quite literally missed the bus or missed the ship. Because by the time the 70s came, immigration policies had started to tighten up. The Anglo-Indian was no longer seen as a distinct entity. Britain is said to have betrayed the community in India. And that is the job of a historian and a sociologist, actually. But you are absolutely right. Large numbers of people did go. And I do have memories of being at Charbagh railway station, waving goodbye to relatives, waving goodbye to friends, watching my parents wipe away a tear because they knew that they would never see those people ever again. So it is something which is very sad. Your second observation is that they seemed to live in the heart of the city, Lal Bagh and Hazratganj
Hazratganj and such areas.
and such areas. And again, that is once again because of a fact of history, I think.
That's interesting. Please, we'd like to know.
You see, after the events of 1857, um, much of Lucknow surrounding Hazratganj was actually demolished. It was smashed down because there were these warrens which existed, tiny lanes, etc., which was very dangerous as far as defense of the British population was concerned. Bungalows came up along those lines, down what today is Ashok Marg, what was called Uttram Road, behind Ashok Marg, okay, in what is still today called Hilton Lane, and so on. These were properties that were occupied by Anglo-Indians who could afford to be in bungalows of this nature, and the community was fairly well-to-do at that time. Those who were perhaps not so well-to-do found accommodation in places like, for example, the Hazratganj Maqbara,
Yeah.
where surrounding the Maqbara itself, there were rooms which perhaps had been built for travelers, for pilgrims, and so on, but were immediately filled up with Anglo-Indians consciously by a government who wanted people who were seen to be uh, loyal to the government at that time, loyal because of community, and they sort of settled in those areas as well.
So they settled the friendlies there.
They settled the friendlies there. That's right.
Right. Now, coming to Hazratganj, what are your earliest memories of Hazratganj, and how have you seen it change over the last so many years?
Okay. The earliest memories and the most pleasant memory is the whole of Hazratganj was red brick. And that change has been very, very unfortunate. Unfortunate if you are slightly romantic, as I am, and hanker for things which existed in the past. During the emergency, for example, our red brick flat, which had a very attractive cream highlighting,
It was the
had
other
to
way
be
around. Red with the cream highlighting.
the red bricks with
Yeah.
cream highlighting.
Oh, yeah.
It because it was the emergency and because freedoms were suspended, we were sent a notice that everything had to be painted, the entire building had to be painted in ivory and pink, and we had to pay for it. And it was considerably costly in those times. It was one of the first attempts to beautify Lucknow, and it was said to be Sanjay Gandhi's brainchild that this should be done. And we watched the way in which the old red brick changed to cream and how the cream changed to pink. And much of that exists still today. The flat where I lived obviously had entrances. We faced Hazratganj, but the entrance to the house was not Hazratganj facing. Until today, the red brick and the cream outlining still remains absolutely untouched. Nobody notices it now because one is in too much of a hurry and busy to get along with life. But these are some lovely little details which have been lost. Take, for example, the block which is called, I think, Jahangirabad Mansions, which houses the India Coffee House, which houses
Universal.
Universal, CCD, and so on. The front of that building is actually on Ashok Marg. And if you pass by that particular area, you will see the most exquisite entrance, tall pillars, a large hallway, a wooden staircase leading to the first floor,
Yeah.
gargoyles, wrought iron, and everything which, if you pause and step back and look at it, you will have so much to admire and so much to be proud of uh, for Lucknow. That has today been overtaken by commercialism. So you have shop fronts, you have signboards, etc. You have these huge metal structures on which flexes are stretched, and then you have a storm and the flexes are torn, and it looks so absolutely terrible.
Tatters.
Yeah. So that's the Hazratganj that I remember. I also remember once again the red brick building of the um, railway office, the Northern Railway office, okay, which is bang in the center. The red brick building of the central bank with its clock tower,
Yeah.
the very attractive but small St. Joseph's Cathedral, the old cathedral located in the place where we now have a modern structure which is about 50 years old. So it was a very attractive and a very grand street. The mess began, I think, much before I was born, because my earliest memories are of crowded lanes where there were these little kiosks at every pillar in every particular building. And once again, during the emergency, Hazratganj was sealed off on both sides. And these large trucks came, and we saw destruction. I don't know, I was too young to know at that time whether warning had been given or not, but destruction of the worst kind, where entire kiosks and shops were uprooted and thrown onto the street, and the contents of those shops went with it. So these are some of the rather troubling memories that I have of the time called the emergency and how it affected daily life for people in those times. I also was at a very impressionable age. This is 1976, 77. And I would have been, say, in class 10. So an age of reasoning and awareness of what was happening definitely would have affected me at that time.
Okay, let's go to pleasant things. Mayfair morning show.
Yes. You see, you first went and showed your nice clothes to God at the cathedral, which is opposite Mayfair. Then you walked across the street and bought a ticket for 1 rupee 90 paisa. And you showed your clothes off to whoever wanted to see, which was generally nobody. The morning shows were legendary. It was a place where you had to be seen and you had to see. And the film didn't really matter. What was more important was that it was very much a part of a cultural practice for a certain class of people. Okay? I cannot say that the whole of Lucknow turned up over there, but as far as, say, my social circle or the people I knew were concerned, this was something which was almost a weekly procedure, a weekly practice. It had to be done.
But also, if I remember, and as I remember also the Mayfair morning show, there were a lot of faces that you saw every week. There was like a 40-50% of the crowd from this Sunday to the next Sunday, which was common.
Well, we have now transported that in Lucknow. You see, Lucknow does not change. Maybe technology changes. So the faces that we saw at the foyer of Mayfair are the faces that you now see on page 3 in the two leading English newspapers of Lucknow. Nothing changes. As I said, you had to be seen and you had to see. The page 3 kind of culture that we have today, you can giggle a little bit about it, but that's the way Lucknow is, okay? It's the same people on the same page just wearing slightly different clothes and perhaps in different rooms or different locales. But the people remain the same, and the intention, I think, remains very much the same as well.
True. Absolutely. And so well put. I mean, this connection to Mayfair morning shows and the page 3, you're absolutely right. Never thought of that. Okay, Kale, another thing I'm going to ask you. Now, this is a general question and then it becomes specific to your family. Anglo-Indian cuisine, traditions. Now, your family, Anglo-Indian traditions, Anglo-Indian cuisine, were they absolutely common to most of the families, to some families, or was your family unique in that? Especially culture and cuisine, we want to know about.
Well,
And what was your favorite delicacy, your family when they celebrated, except for the Christmas cake and all those things which we know about? Tell us something which most of us don't know about.
Okay. Cuisine is very much a marker in culture. And since you have used the phrase or the title Anglo-Indian, it cannot be terribly different from that which is consumed in this part of the country, just as Anglo-Indians would also adapt food to their particular tastes. Say if they were living in the south of India, all right, and you would have the influences of southern cuisine making its way into that. For example, in South India, you would have pepper water. Okay, now pepper water was a glorified rasam. And rasam is added to or used as a sauce with rice and maybe a jhal frazi, which today you find on people's menus, but which means basically a hot curry. So a hot curry, rice, pepper water, these things would come together, not so much traditional in the north of India, but very much in the south of India over there. Mulkatani soup, considered to be a delicacy. It comes from Malik Tani, meaning pepper water. All right. So the Tani being what becomes Tony, all right, through an anglicization of the word. You would have kedgeree, which would be eaten for breakfast. Not in my family, but it is very much a part of what might be called Anglo-Indian cuisine. And of course, you would have soda water and whiskey, okay, which is definitely Anglo-Indian, especially when you add some form of anti-malaria drug like quinine into it to give you tonic water, which is distinctly Anglo-Indian and a contribution to international beverage as well.
So tonic originated in India?
It originated in India. You see, you would have a sundowner.
Yeah.
Okay. Fortunately, that tradition still exists. So in the evening, in order to be careful of malaria and to avoid malaria, or maybe this is just apocryphal, quinine was added to soda water with some sugar. All right. And this was added to whatever the tot was for that particular evening. And gradually the taste developed. Okay. You notice even today you have something called sipoy, not sipahi.
Yeah,
You have sipoy, tonic water, and so on. They all trace their traditions back to events and situations like this.
वो बात नहीं बताइए आपने celebratory food क्या था आपके घर में? Let's say, let me give an example.
Okay, what did we have for Christmas? Right?
Yeah.
When we were small, there was no such thing as poultry farming in India, leave alone Lucknow. Right? People grew their own chickens. You went to Kaisar Bagh, you had some slaughtering done, and you would have it prepared according to the way in which you wanted. Therefore, a chicken meal was considered a huge privilege. It was had on high days and holidays. There was always the argument, which I am glad to see is surfacing again, whether chicken without skin or chicken with the skin tasted better. And the argument still continues. Today, young people are fed up of chicken. I ran a school where the boys would say, "Oh, chicken again," right? To somebody who would only have chicken in school on for the founders' feast because it was the biggest day in the school calendar where you had to get the most special meal. So, turkey, etc., came much, much later. There were the more ambitious who would make duck roast in orange sauce. My mother wasn't that ambitious, and she was too overworked in any case. But there were these special delicacies. But most food, okay, uh, we will see a curry and a rice, a curry and a rice, a curry and a rice was a common combination. Dal, often called dal, would be made into a typical lentil soup as it is in anyone's home today.
Mhm.
It would be tempered or chalk in the same way as in anyone else's house today. But it would be eaten in large quantities on top of the rice, not separated as we would in a thali right until today in a typical North Indian household. So there were these little differences, and I think that's what makes the community uh, very special, that you take the best or what is the most favorite of that which is European or Anglo, and you take the best, which is that of India, and put them together. I'll give you an interesting detail.
Yeah.
My parents celebrated 50 years of marriage. And we, as sons, uh, we decided that we were going to celebrate it in a big way because, coincidentally, my brother and his wife celebrated their 25th anniversary on the same day.
Oh, wow.
So it was a 50-25. This is in the year 2000. That's nearly 25 years ago. Okay. And to book the Taj Hotel, okay, was a very, very special treat for a very special occasion. And so there was this very fancy menu which was prepared, which was largely European, more because the food and beverages manager insisted that we should do that because he would be able to display that food better, he felt. My parents enjoyed that evening, and it is one of the happiest memories that I still retain. At about 1 o'clock in the morning, we packed up. There were the usual presents to be carried to the car and tips to be handed out and people to be thanked and so on. And we eventually got back to the car and started to drive out from the Taj, where my father, who otherwise was a quiet and slightly simple man, right, said, "Son, can't we go and have some paratha kebab somewhere?" Okay. Now, that to me is an amalgamation of cultures. That on this day, where the finest of European food was presented, and which I'm sure he had as well, he still felt that the special event would be more special if, well, we had paratha kebab. Okay, a more poignant a little addition to that story. The night before he died, he did have biryani and kebab. And that keeps the family, my brother and I, very happy and comfortable that he went out, all right, doing the things and eating the things which he loved, which were absolutely Indian in nature.
So basically, that was his comfort food.
That was his comfort food. It is a comfort food of the family even till today.
Okay.
Come on, you're the guy who makes the biryani, etc. All right, we are the ones who eat it.
Yeah. So we have to repeat that. Now, another thing totally different. Let's talk about another love of yours, theater. when did your love for theatre start? Was it in school? Was it post-school, college? Were you doing? I'm sure you were. I know you were doing plays in school, and then carried on, and then that love has continued over the last so many decades.
Yeah. It is
Just talk about your journey about theatre. In theatre, what is?
Now, that first of all, I'm extremely humbled by the question, because the theatre which we've done as adults, we have done as amateurs, and we have done it just for the fun of it. That we are good at it is another matter. all
But
right?
it's your love. We're talking about your love.
Where you are talking about the love. Now, where did that come from? It came from a solid, holistic education. Okay? When we were in prep, when we were in class 1, when we were in class 2, every single year we were up on stage, and we had to be, most of the class, except those who were, for example, terrific in games and were not very interested in the so-called cultural activity, were kind of excused. We had none of this nonsense that this year we will do a play and next year we will do sports, okay, because we can't have both the events in the same year because it takes up too much time. As I said, we actually got an education. And when we had teachers who trained us from the earliest stages of how to walk with your hands behind your back, how to stand in the center of the stage, marking that it must be under this middle frill of the stage curtain, how you had to bow, how you had to stand straight and announce yourself or announce your poem, you see, what happens? The thrill of public exposure, I won't call it public speaking, but the thrill of public exposure automatically comes. We were taught to sing not as a class, not for a period so that the class teacher gets a rest, but we were taught to sing, which now as a teacher of English, I realize was the best phonetic training which I received through song. We had this large lady called Mrs. Jenkins. And
This
she
was in the girls' school or the boys'
this
school?
is now in the boys' school,
Okay.
but in the girls' school, it was exactly the same, all right? The same thrill of singing. Of course, we were a little smaller, so the memories are a little dimmer, but they definitely did exist. But in the college, class 3, class 4, Mrs. Jenkins, she was very large. She covered the piano stool and maybe a little more, all right? But she had a heart of gold, and she taught us how to enunciate. All right, we would have to sing scales up and down over and over and over and over again. You try getting an adult to do that, and they are not going to cooperate. But when children are small, they are far more ready to do things like that. But notice, from stuff like that, we got tonal qualities into our voice. I remember clearly her saying, "Open now your mouth wide when you sing ah. I should be able to see your breakfast." And little as we were quite terrified that she was actually looking into our innards and would be able to tell us what exactly we had eaten that morning. Miss Jenkins was very wonderful. She taught us in tandem with what we were taught in an English language and an English literature class in the typical academic classroom. These things went together. And if there is a love for theatre, a love for public speaking, all the things by which we communicate so well as students who were brought up in La Martiniere, it is largely because of this. Elton de Souza, our teacher in senior school at La Martiniere College, whose successor I became as principal of the college, was our drama teacher in the senior school and was probably yours as well.
Yeah.
Not only did he teach us so brilliantly, especially drama, But when he put us on stage, he just didn't expect things of us. He would actually display to us how it was to be done and encouraged us to go a step further, which, as Martiniere boys, we were ever ready to do. So, all those taboos, things, there's restrictions, you must not behave like this, you must not behave like that on stage. You could give it all up and you could do your own thing and say your own thing, only restricted by the requirements of the script. When I use the word script, I don't want to look at you, Faisal, because I know that when you have directed me as an actor, your main complaint against me is that I never remember the script or that I make up my own script along the way, throwing everybody else completely off guard. This I agree, but the love for theatre started in those early years in childhood.
So when you went back to school as its head, what did you from and your experience as growing up and then us doing theater together and things, did that help you in getting theater in a certain direction in La Martiniere?
La Martiniere already had a tradition of
Yeah, it
theatre,
did.
and the tradition continued. I will say that the addition or the value addition which was made was for a lot of musical theatre to also be put up. So
Yes, I saw some lovely
yeah.
shows. Yeah.
So some of the shows, okay, were brilliantly done. And why? Not because I was acting in them, but because we had staff who were so talented, who are so talented, and who had the opportunity to be able to display those talents using very, very cooperative and talented young boys to be able to do those parts. Okay, so La Martiniere was very much on the right course as far as theatre is concerned because of the talent that we had. Which reminds me that when I speak about the talented teachers, I have to admit that they too were trained at La Martiniere as pupils of La Martiniere and just gave back what they received, but they gave it back with a bonus as well.
No, but what was the reason? What was the reason that the theater and other activities went to the next level under your stewardship? Was it because I'm asking you a leading question? Was it because you gave them more freedom? Was it because you gave them more budget? Was it because you directed them? Did you micromanage? What did you do that it took a leap once you reached there?
I think just simple encouragement as far as my personal contribution is concerned. My personal contribution was always to stand behind with the dramatis personae, as it were, knowing that I had their back, that I was there to support them if they required support. Okay, personal micromanagement was very, very limited because, as I said, uh, here were people of great talent who used their talent very effectively.
Yeah, this is a great improvement I saw there because I've been going to school regularly and things. Now let's move on to another part of your life, Lucknow Christian College. So you did your uh, school, La Martiniere College, University,
No, Lucknow Christian
Lucknow
College,
Christian College, PG,
from Lucknow University,
Lucknow University, and your B.Ed.
from Punjab University,
Okay, and then you
but that
went.
came much later. I
Oh,
did that at the age of 40.
oh,
Okay,
and then you went to Christian College.
Christian College.
How many years were you there?
Okay, now I worked in Christian College for 27 years. That's older than some of you people who are watching this program. I studied at Christian College for 2 years. They were two very lovely years. We had a 2 year undergraduate degree
At
course
that
at
time, yeah.
that time. Uh, I then went to Lucknow University to do an MA, which I thoroughly enjoyed because we got some very good teaching, and it was a lovely course. And I was fortunate to be able to come back almost immediately to Lucknow Christian College and to teach students who were perhaps 2 years younger than I. It was a bit of a it was a bit of a shock. It was quite a learning curve which was established over there, but I enjoyed my years in Christian College as well. Completely different from leading a school.
So that was before you came to the school, right?
Right.
So now, tell me something very interesting that you did in in while your years in Christian College. ऐसा कुछ special जो आपने किया वहाँ पे? Not being boastful,
Not being,
but being different.
Well, I taught in English, and I think that is one of the biggest differences. Now, I'm not being facetious about it, right? But English was very often taught in Hindi, which I couldn't do. I heard things like from the Merchant of Venice. How would you describe that Portia was beautiful? So you had to say things like, Portia sarvshresht sundari thi, all right?
No, but
I
this
couldn't do that.
But who asked you to do that?
And I wouldn't do that, okay?
But
And
did somebody ask you to do that?
yes, all right. It was kind of
Let's
the
not
norm.
take names. Let's not take
Yeah,
names.
it was kind of the norm because otherwise the boys won't understand. How would you explain a line from a translation of Kamban's Ramayan, of which we had to teach a particular section, which said something like, O Prince, you whose beauty baffles the painters, right? Speaking about Lakshman, right? And so it would come out as something like, Rajkumar जिसका सुंदरता चित्रकार को परेशान कर देता है. Now that sounds so formal and so stupid, all right? And
that sounds negative also, actually.
It might even sound negative, but the fact is, what was unique was actually to teach English in English and to bring young people who came from very, very diverse backgrounds with some knowledge of English to admire and to appreciate the language and later its literature as well.
In Christian College, you were teaching the first, second, and the third years?
Well, I began by teaching for about 8 or 9 months in the intermediate department.
Okay.
And then moved to teaching undergraduate pupils. From a 2-year course, we then moved to the 3-year course. And then English was the first subject to be introduced as for a master's degree, and which made Christian College a postgraduate college.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were teaching postgraduate students as well. So I've had this very unique experience of teaching so many ages of students, and knowing that at each age there are different challenges both for the teacher as well as for the learner.
Right. Now, another very important aspect of your teaching has been the Carlyle McFarland coaching, which you did in Hazratganj, right? So everybody I've met, my age, slightly senior, and younger, McFarland के notes मिल जाए तो English में life बन जाए.
I suppose that's true, all right? Reason being that examinations are so predictable, right? Keep in mind, and let's be absolutely honest and reasonable about this. Okay, Lucknow University trains you to learn five questions, answers to 5 questions, and those 5 questions have to come. And if you are slightly discerning as a teacher, you would even know what those questions are going to be. Teaching the so-called coaching, which was not, I prefer to believe it was not just for an examination, but it was teaching for the sheer pleasure and satisfaction of being able to teach, because at university you just taught 5 questions.
Oh no, but let me interrupt. This is not just university. These are
That's
school students also.
That's what I'm explaining.
Yeah.
Okay. So the thrill of teaching was with school students, where you taught class 9, class 10, class 11, class 12, and then you taught BA1, BA2, BA3, MA1, MA2. So that's about 9 years.
Yeah. So you were
All right.
really
And
casting the net wide.
oh yes, the net wide, and more important, there was a lot of money that also came in. So I'll be completely honest about it. Okay, I chose to teach English because it made more money than teaching history, which is still my first love.
Really?
Yes, it is.
I haven't known this all these years.
Well, all that we've done today has been to talk about the
Yeah.
history of Hazratganj or the history of
Yeah,
Lucknow.
true.
So it rears up every now and then.
One episode from your Christian college days which you would like to remember to forget?
Actually, quite a few. Okay, but we do have constraints of time. Okay?
Let's talk about something
Among-
totally bizarre which happened.
Well, there isn't really anything bizarre, except that, yes, we did have things like boys being murdered, being shot, being burnt. And when you meet families and talk to them about it, okay, it disturbs you very, very much. And you realize you're not teaching children, or you're not teaching just young people, you're teaching those who have already entered into the world of crime. Okay, and well, some of them were victims of that crime as well. We have had students' unions and dealt with unions. Okay, I have, it might sound dramatic, but it's true, been shot at, fortunately not shot, but shot at by a young man who had been forced to drink or had been made drunk, because whenever I was in a classroom, like other members, conscientious members of staff at that time, when you were in a classroom during examination and did not allow people to cheat, all right, the results were bound to be violent. Now, whenever they would say, sir, allow us to cheat in that many words, and you would just ignore them and continue walking, because while you could never eliminate this evil, it was possible to minimize it. And that is something that we could do by being conscientious about our work. So the boys presumed, the criminal type presumed that, look, this guy doesn't understand us when we speak in Hindi. So let's get this guy, who was a brigadier's son, gave him enough to drink, 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a summer's day. He comes to abuse me in English, because you see, that's the language which this man will understand, and it'll be a good threat. And he had one of these country-made weapons with him.
A kata.
If that's what you call
Yeah,
it.
we call it a kata.
So, sounds nice. So he took out this katta and shot it into an ixora bush rather than at me, even though I was in that area. It became a huge case, all right? Keep in mind that it was then that the anti-cheating bill was introduced. At the time when the next government came, within half an hour, the anti-cheating bill was immediately removed.
Yeah.
It was withdrawn. So these are things which we have actually faced, and even been arrested. And that was not a very pleasant situation, even though the police were very kind to me and gave me samosas in jail. We were held up while taking out one of these so-called marches against copying. and just near a rubbish heap in Golaganj, and that rubbish heap still exists.
Yes.
Just near that rubbish heap, the police came and swung into action and made their usual, read out the riot act, as it were, and told us that Section 144 had been imposed, and so on and so forth. And we were toddled off to the police station. So we faced stuff like this, and even though I am surrendering, giving up, burning, throwing away a lot of documents related to the earlier years of my life, I still have a file which has all the newspaper cuttings of these particular events, and somehow I have not matured sufficiently to be able to consign that to flames as well. I hope to be able to do it someday, but it's not happened till now. So these have been some of the very unpleasant events that have taken place. But there is one thing that does stand out, and I laugh about it. You might not find it funny, but I laugh about it every time I think of it because I was there. There was this very lovely circular lawn which forms the central part of
Around which the
around,
you
yes, the
drive
drive
around that.
around
Yeah.
Christian College. And from time to time, when I was in college, to have electric mowers, etc., was not the easiest of things. And so you would have women who would come and cut the grass when it was rather tall, and they would collect it and perhaps go and sell it or whatever. And one day, there was this very old lady who was cutting grass. And she had seen it all. She had seen strikes, she had seen violence, she had seen public guests, she had seen great events which had happened in the college campus. But suddenly, from one of the hostels, one of the hostel boys, probably in sport, right, had picked up a bugle and had just blew on that bugle a peal. And this woman, she didn't even pause for a moment. Hearing that, she said, "Lyo bhaiya, ab barat bhi aa gayi." So she'd seen it all right? And this was all that was left for her to see before she went back to God. And she knew that that time had come. So Christian College was lovely because we developed fantastic relationships with sensitive, thinking young adults. There was always, in the midst of all the trouble associated with student unrest, etc., there was always a core group who were not just willing to learn, but thirsty to learn. And what a pleasure it was to teach them, and what a pleasure it is today to still be in touch with them and to see the way in which they have progressed into very ding-dong men, okay, who are doing different things in different parts of the world.
So, Carlyle, one episode, quickly run through it, that about that case of yours, which you had filed when you were threatened, and when the accused stopped coming, and then you got involved in the thing because as complainant you kept going, and that guy didn't come, and the legality almost fell on you. Just quickly run through this.
At Christian College,
Yeah.
as well as at Martiniere College, okay, we've had quite a lot of run-ins with either the police or the bureaucracy, which is a little worse. With the police, right, once it moves out of the thana and goes to the court, well, then there are all kinds of ways in which people know how to delay cases. A particular case, a boy, or young man rather, okay, was in trouble with me and in trouble with others as well. And there had been this case pending for quite some time, and he would go and maybe pay off whatever and get another date. And I would toddle off very nicely and be told that come on so and so date now, and then on so and so date, and so on. And we fastidiously followed that because we thought we were doing it for a certain academic principle for probity as well as sanctity in the examination system. But there eventually came a time when I think even the judges got fed up, all right, and said that if you don't bring this man, all right, the accused, for want of a better word, if you don't bring this man, all right, there is something which you are doing to keep him away from here, and so on. And it was the cart before the horse, as it were, because I really didn't know what to do. Till eventually, the matter was solved when this young man, who by then was not so much of a young man, had to go abroad. He had to go to the Gulf to get a job or something. And then he came and fell at my feet and said, please withdraw this, because you see, I am not getting a police clearance, and unless this is withdrawn, the police clearance will not come, and so on and so forth. And this had gone on for years together. I really don't know what happened or what has happened to that. Okay, it still lies in limbo. Okay.
So, Carlyle, so there's some questions and comments which are coming up on
Right.
as people are watching. So we'll go
That's
to this
so nice.
after.
Because if questions are coming, it means people are actually listening, and it is a pleasure to be able to talk with you. And I do hope that when Faisal fields questions on your behalf, the replies will be suitable and appropriate.
So, your last innings. We'll come back to that since we're running out of time.
It's not my last
No,
innings, first
your
of all.
last, which has been it was the
My previous innings.
previous innings. Okay. So that was La Martiniere, restoration of the building, and you taking it to, we've discussed it, taking it to the cultural and the sports activities to another level, the academics, as we've discussed earlier also about this. But what was the thing you enjoyed most in La Martiniere when you were actually,
Heading
when you when you reached to what you achieved? 2-3 things which you would like to tell all of us, which you really enjoyed and you feel are your biggest achievements. There are several, I know, but according to you.
It's not a difficult question, but it requires too long an answer, which I must reduce. And whatever I will share with you will obviously just be the tip of the iceberg, because iceberg it is. The happiest memories and the happiest moments are always associated with the boys of La Martiniere College, the tiny ones, the ones who are beginning to grow, and those who feel that they are very grown up. The joy which I got in being at La Martiniere was much greater joy emotionally than the academic challenge that I received while teaching undergraduate and postgraduate classes. And I feel that I made a difference at school level, and I might have contributed to academic understanding at senior level, at postgraduate level. So that was, first of all, the first difference. I was unprepared for how much children can love you. For 27 years, as I said, I taught university, and it was largely a meeting of minds. There was, as I have described, so much of unrest, not because the young men were bad, but because there was a lot of misdirection, because that's what was happening in society. I'm glad to see that things are definitely a little better now. and academic degrees and accomplishments are given a little more credit than they were when I was in the midst of it. But when I came to school, okay, you could actually feel the love. And you knew that it was expressed in ways which were associated with and appropriate with the age. For example, you will never get a boy of 17 complimenting you. I mean, it's just not done, okay? Because he's at 17,
Young macho
you're a
man.
young
Yeah.
macho man, etc.
Yeah.
But if you display a certain appreciation to those who are much smaller in the presence of that boy who is perhaps 17, you will see how that boy too will try his best to be able to earn a compliment or earn recognition or earn some kind of acknowledgement that there is a relationship that exists, not based just on merit, but that I exist and my existence you have recognized. Okay, sounds a little sentimental, but
No, but it's
La
very
Martiniere
true.
was
It's very
more
true.
an emotional experience rather than an academic one.
Right. So I think we are running out of time, Carlyle, although I'm really enjoying this talk and it's so much fun. So there's this one thing which has come up on as from the chat here. It's Diksha Saulani. What was the participation of women in the society during your times in Lucknow? Your times in Lucknow. Now, this is interesting because your time is still in Lucknow. So, were they equally involved in the arts and cultural activities like theatre and professionally as well? I think she's talking about the earlier time because now we know what is happening.
Yeah. I
So
think,
let's go to the 70s and 80s, and I think this is what she means.
Yeah. To Diksha, I can give you a direct answer to that. If you ask me what was happening in general, okay, in general, the role of women was definitely very, very suppressed. But when you ask me about the role of women in the Anglo-Indian community, it was just the opposite. I repeat, it was just the opposite. The community is held together by its women. And the community is held together by its women who are unafraid of recognizing that they run homes, that they run families, that they also earn independent incomes. And what they say matters both socially as well as within the family. It can sometimes be seen as a good example to follow. To move slightly away from the direct answer to your question, we never saw women on the streets in Western clothes. Okay. Anglo-Indian girls, mothers, my mother, only wore Western clothes. Gradually, there has come a change. Those who have stayed behind in India, Anglo-Indians who have stayed behind in India, have converted to wearing clothes traditionally worn in a typical Indian culture. And it doesn't take you very far to look and see that girls, daughters of the house, girls in the street today are almost always in Western attire, both because it's kind of comfortable, the jeans and t-shirt kind of thing, or the shorter the skirt, the better it is if you're going for a party. Okay, which is a huge change which we see today. This did not exist at the time when I was growing up. Why I have observed it and watched it is because it was endemic to my community. And now when I see, okay, that everybody is dressing as they want, which is very wonderful, there is a wonderful interflow of cultures as expressed through cuisine, as expressed through fashion, as expressed through the choices which you make in what you wear.
Right. As we come to a close of our conversation, Carlyle, I think we have just about 2-3 minutes to go. One message in keeping with today's times, in keeping with today's society, in keeping is what is good for the future, the present and the future. One message that you want to give our listeners.
Now, that's a tough one,
Yeah,
right? Because
I saved it for the last.
sort of, I have to give some kind of Socrates statement, I presume. But if I were to share a message with young people today, or even with my peers and contemporaries, okay, let's learn from each other. Let's continue to learn from each other. This interflow and amalgamation of experiences, events, thoughts, challenges, differences of opinion are all part of a process that is helping us to evolve as a society. And the more we learn from each other, by being, I presume, exposed to each other and ready to listen to each other, well, that's what I would truly want. It's what I would want every child who I've ever taught to also remember and carry into the world into which he or she will grow up.
So, as we come to the end of our conversation with Carlyle McFarland, Nayaab Nageene of Lucknow, a truly unique gem. You heard things about him. I mean, I've known this guy for 30, 40 years, I don't know how many years. But the things I've learned about him today. So his message, learn from each other, is something I've learned. I've learned of his love for history. I always thought he was English and more English and more English in theater and English and things. History? So this is news to me. But I'd like to sign off, and Carlyle, I'm sure, let's say bye to our viewers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being here.
And thank you for your patient listening.
Good night. Questions come in? So, Diksha Sawalani was the last question. There was just this Diksha Sawalani question. The rest has come. I don't know if this is not updating, maybe. Yeah, this is not updating. I'll take it. I'll take it. So there's a Vaishali Subodh who says Shakespeare's in my life because of your teaching. Then there is a Sunny Rizvi, sir, you're a great inspiration for the youth. Lots of messages. Then there's a question from a Mr. Vivek Bhargav. How do you feel after retirement? Mart is not the same without you. No, I don't know if you'd like to comment on that. Tawheed Haider asks, we'd like to know your perspective on the importance of infrastructural developments and conservation of spaces and traditions in an educational setup.
Okay.
That's heavy, but
that's pretty heavy. Okay. Yeah. And I think I know Tawheed.
You know Tawheed.
Tawheed, we'll talk about this later.
Yeah.
All right. You and I. I promise you, I'll have the whiskey. You just listen.
So then there are lots of messages about miss you and Mart, and I have learned this. Vaishali Subodh says, I have learned so much from you, and very fortunately, my son loved his principal so much. So 2 generations of taught.
Yeah. So I do hope that I'll have an opportunity to read the comments. They're tremendously flattering, all right? But when you're in transition from one system of work to another, such flattery is very, very rewarding. Thank you very much.
Good night. Good night.
Right.
Good night.